Hello, fourth graders, and welcome to another video science test review. Today we are going to be talking about volcanoes. I guess the first place I'd like to start is kind of what a volcano looks like, some of the characteristics, and that sort of thing. Then we are going to talk about how volcanoes start in the first place, what causes them. Then we are going to be looking at some different kinds of volcanoes based upon what they look like. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the physical characteristics of a volcano. Here you can see the different layers of Earth's crust. And kind of real deep here into the Earth's crust, you have the magma chamber. Now this magma, as we talked about in the rock cycle, it's this melted rock based upon Earth's pressure, the weight coming down with all the layers. It starts to heat up like the friction in our hands. When we rub back and forth, it starts to get hot. Well, these rocks actually start to melt. That's where we get metamorphic rocks and that sort of thing. This melted rock, when it's underneath Earth's crust, is called magma. Now this gas and the pressure and the heat starts to build up, okay? And after a while it starts working its way to the top, working its way to the top. Now that, the top of the Earth's crust may be closed, but similarly to a soda bottle here, you can see the Coca-Cola Classic is filled up with gas. Once you shake that, the top of the soda bottle starts to get real tense, the pressure, and eventually what happens is the gas becomes so strong that it actually blows the top off and sprays. That's the same kind of thing that is going on here with a volcano. The gas builds up, the heat and the pressure, and it actually explodes and blows through the top. That is called an eruption. Once that magma comes outside on top of Earth's crust, it then is called lava. Okay? Now, once that lava kind of spews out of the vent, okay, it's going to seep off the sides, and once it dries and hardens, it's going to form another layer of rock. After a while, another eruption happens, the lava spews out, and another layer is formed on top of it, and that's how mountains form. The lava spews out, the magma spews out, and the lava hardens into another layer. The magma spews out, and the lava hardens, and it creates another layer, and so eventually you have a mountain formed from these layers. Okay, so that's what I put right here, hardens to make new mountain layer. The place where the magma explodes out is called a vent. That's the opening. Now usually at the top of a volcano, the very top of it explodes. What happens is you have a little crater or like a bowl that forms right around the vent area. And like I already mentioned, that's called a crater. Once that top blows, it creates like a little dip or crater or bowl at the top there near the vent. Okay? Alright, so that's basically kind of the just the physical characteristics, the makeup of a volcano. Now let's talk about some different ways that a volcano can form. Now lots of different volcanoes, many of them anyway, are formed near faults. Now faults are where Earth's crust is either sliding like this across one another, or maybe Earth's crust is coming together and one layer actually dips below. Fault lines also is where the plates are separating. So earthquakes typically form along fault lines. In this example here, the volcano is forming where two plates on a fault line are coming together, and the one layer starts to go underneath. So you can see they're coming together, these two plates, and this layer actually starts to dip underneath this layer. What happens is this lower underneath layer, because of the pressure and the force of the top layer and the friction of it rubbing, melts. Okay, so this layer goes down, and because of the friction and the intense weight of the top layer, it starts to melt. Magma is created, it builds up, and then it starts to shoot to the top. Okay, so that's pretty much it here. So this particular volcano is forming when you have two plates that are coming together and one starts to dip underneath. And that layer underneath starts to melt because of the weight and the pressure and the friction. That creates the magma, which then builds up and is going to explode out the top. Okay. Another kind of volcano, well actually let me talk about the one last one that forms near faults. The other one forms where the two faults are going apart. This one is where they're coming together. The other one is where they are coming apart. And that's actually called a... Oh, where did I put it here? It is called a rift volcano when they're coming apart. So basically the plates start to pull apart, and the magma that's underneath then now has an open door to come up through the middle. So the plates start to pull apart, and that opens up a door for the magma to then shoot up through the middle. That's the rift volcano. Another type of volcano forms where there is no fault lines. Now, geologists think that these volcanoes form over what are called hot spots. So the hot spot actually stays in one place, and the Earth's crust on top just continues to move across this hot spot, as you can see here. So the hot spot stays the same. Now the plate starts here, and a volcano forms and creates an island, kind of where my fingernails are. Then the plate keeps moving over the hot spot, and now you have another island that forms over my knuckles because another volcano erupted. The plate continues to move over the hot spot, and now you have an island that's created kind of right here by my wrist. So you can see these islands keep forming as the plate goes across the hot spot, and volcanoes explode, and you have these mountain layers that are created. That's how the Hawaiian Islands were created. You can see the plate moves that way over this little hot spot, and it keeps making islands all along the way. Now, if the volcano no longer has magma underneath it ready to explode, it's called a dormant volcano. So you can see this one's dormant, 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 but this one, because the hot spot is still underneath, it would be an active volcano. All right? Okay, now let's talk about the three different kinds of volcanoes. The first one is called a shield volcano. It has very flat sides. The lava tends to ooze evenly and flatly. It oozes out in all directions at the same time. So it creates this very flat layers. And that's pretty much it. Okay, so it creates these layers that are very flat, very spread out in all directions. So that's called a shield volcano. A cinder volcano has a very steep side. It's kind of shaped like a cone. And as the eruption explodes, all of the pieces kind of fall down onto the sides and create this kind of steep edges. So the pieces fall all around the vent area. The last one is called a composite volcano. Same thing, you have these layers of ash that start to develop. In this particular one, it explodes, and then there may be a quiet time where the lava just kind of oozes very slowly. It's nice and quiet, and all of a sudden there's another explosion. And then it'll quiet down, and the lava will ooze slowly again. You can see same kind of thing here. the mountain is formed from these layers of dried up and cooled off lava. Okay, well, that is pretty much it here for the volcanoes. We talked about the basic physical characteristics of a volcano and how they kind of work. We talked about the different why volcanoes form, and they typically form around faults, either when they pull apart and it comes through the middle, or when they come together and one layer goes underneath. If they don't form along fault lines, then they form over what geologists call these hot spots. And then we also lastly looked at the 3 basic types of volcanoes. That's it. I hope you've enjoyed this science video test review. I know you guys are going to do great on it. If you have any questions, contact me on Facebook and Edmodo. And I look forward to seeing you guys in school.